The world's largest aircraft carrier is heading home after a historic and high-stakes deployment in West Asia. The USS Gerald R Ford is set to return to its home port in Virginia after spending more than 300 days at sea. Now, the Gerald Ford's recent deployment, remember, has been the longest for a U.S. carrier since the Vietnam War era. The carrier has been at the heart of America's two crucial escalating regional conflicts, including military actions linked to Iran and a high-profile operation involving the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who now sits in an American prison. Now, the Ford's return, remember, comes at a time when U.S. naval presence in West Asia has been exceptionally high. Just last week, the USS George H.W. Bush had arrived in the region, joining the USS Abraham Lincoln, which has been deployed since January this year. This temporarily brought the number of American aircraft carriers in the region to 3. Now, this level of deployment has not been seen since the 2003 Iraq conflict. Earlier this month, the USS Gerald R Ford surpassed a major milestone. It broke the record for the longest post-Vietnam deployment. On its 295th day at sea, it exceeded the previous record that was set in 2020 by the Abraham Lincoln during the COVID-19 pandemic. This achievement highlights operational endurance of the American warship. Simultaneously, it has also raised concerns about the toll on the service members and the strain on the carrier's military equipment, especially after the carrier previously suffered a fire incident that forced it to leave the Mediterranean waters to a NATO base in Greece for further repairs. Meanwhile, Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei has issued a new written statement that was read on Iran's state television. He claimed that Washington has suffered a disgraceful defeat in this war. Mojtaba has also declared that Iran will continue to protect its nuclear assets even as Trump's Hormuz blockade remains in place. America's tensions with Iran remain sharp at the moment. Iranian Naval Commander Rear Admiral Shahram Irani has issued a strong warning. He claims that a new weapon he says adversaries will deeply fear will soon be revealed. Now, Iran has also asserted that Iranian forces carried out multiple missile strikes against the USS Abraham Lincoln and temporarily disrupted its ability to conduct air operations. According to Iran, its armed forces have launched over 100 waves of retaliatory strikes across the region since hostilities escalated in late February. With a fragile ceasefire in place between the two adversaries, the stage for further conflict has been evolving. The attention now shifts to Washington, where President Donald Trump is expected to receive a critical briefing from the U.S. Central Command Chief, Brad Cooper. Reports suggest that a range of military operations are under consideration, including a short and powerful series of strikes targeting Iranian infrastructure. There's a possibility of deploying special forces operation to secure highly enriched uranium stockpiles as well. Stopping Iran's nuclear program has been at the core of Trump's and Netanyahu's war games in Iran. While airstrikes and long-range attacks can damage facilities, destroying or removing Iran's nuclear stockpile would likely require a full-scale ground invasion. With more than 50,000 troops already present across West Asia and reports of 82nd Airborne slated to join the force, Washington's intention of putting boots on the ground is now evident. But such an operation would not only face Iran's military fury, its natural defenses as well will have to be faced by American forces. Let's quickly break this down for you. The Zagros Mountains, remember, which stretch over 1,500 kilometers across western Iran, create a natural wall that shields the country from land invasions from Iraq and Turkey. The range extends towards the southern coast near Bandar Abbas, adding an extra layer of defense. The Alborz Mountains, as you can see in the map, run along the southern coast of the Caspian Sea. They stretch about 900 kilometers. This range forms a barrier between the Caspian coast and central Iran, making any advance through northern Iran a complex and dangerous task. Another plan expected to be shared with Trump is focused on taking over part of the Strait of Hormuz to reopen it to commercial shipping. But of course, such an operation will also require more extensive naval deployment in addition to the boots on ground. Iran also, remember, controls key islands in the Persian Gulf and the Hormuz, which provide strategic advantages. The Kharg Island, which is located 25 kilometers off the coast, is an oil export hub with flat terrain, but easy to defend using missiles, artillery and drones. Abu Musa, Greater and Lesser Tunb are close to the UAE coast and they're critical shipping lanes. They allow Iran to take control of, in fact, tanker movement into the Hormuz. These islands are heavily fortified, but small size and limited natural cover make invasion difficult. Finally, you've got the Hormuz Island Group, which includes Qeshm, Hormuz and Larak, which sit at the gateway of the Strait of Hormuz. Control over these islands gives Iran the leverage over global oil shipping lanes, and their proximity to the mainland makes offensive operations extremely risky. At the same time, Donald Trump has raised questions about the U.S. military footprint in Europe as well. Remember, he's been criticizing NATO allies for not contributing more naval support for his Iran campaign. Trump has now indicated that his administration is considering reducing troop levels in Germany. As per reports from the U.S. Defense Manpower Data Center, currently more than 68,000 American troops are stationed across Europe, with over 36,400 based in Germany. Moving on, OpenAI and its CEO Sam Altman are facing legal action from families of victims in one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings, with lawsuits alleging that the company ignored early warnings from its own systems and failed to inform the authorities about a potential threat linked to ChatGPT months before the attack. The lawsuits filed in a U.S. federal court in California claim OpenAI flagged conversations linked to the shooter as early as June 2025, with its safety team reporting a credible and imminent threat of real-world violence. But according to the complaints, OpenAI leadership, including Sam Altman, overruled recommendations to inform law enforcement and instead only deactivated the account.
We now know, because of whistleblowers, that OpenAI had flagged the account as being dangerous, as being an account where the shooter was discussing gun violence. 12 people within the company were jumping up and down saying, we need to tell the authorities. And the leadership at OpenAI said, no, we need to keep this quiet.
The lawsuits allege the shooter was then able to create a new account and continue using ChatGPT to plan the attack. The February 2026 shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, left 9 people dead, including several children, after the 18-year-old gunwoman killed family members before opening fire at a school. Families claim OpenAI's failure to act may have prevented authorities who had previously flagged the shooter from intervening in time. They also allege that the company prioritized user privacy and business interests, including a potential IPO over public safety. OpenAI has called this incident a tragedy and said that it has a zero-tolerance policy for violence, adding that it has since strengthened safeguards and threat detection systems. Sam Altman has issued a public apology as well, admitting the company should have alerted law enforcement. The lawsuits seek damages and demand major changes to OpenAI's safety protocols, including mandatory reporting of credible threats. The case could set a precedent on how AI companies handle real-world threats, as courts now examine whether failure to act on warning signs can make tech firms liable for violence linked to their platforms. The narrative war between the United States and Iran is now heating up. Both sides are engaging in a battle of words to show they have the leverage against the other. President Donald Trump claims that Iran is racing against time before its oil storage hits a breaking point. And in response, Ghalibaf, the Iranian parliament speaker, said that the American plan is a losing strategy, and he's warned of crude surging back to 2022 highs of $140 a barrel. President Trump rejected Iran's proposal to open the Strait of Hormuz. He said that Iran's oil storage and pipelines are getting close to exploding because the Islamic Republic can't export oil due to the U.S. Hormuz blockade. The president sees continuing the U.S. blockade of Iranian ships in the strait as his primary source of leverage in this war at the moment. Trump has claimed that America has all the cards and can wait out Iran. Now, the blockade of Iranian vessels in Hormuz is America's plan to bleed the Islamic Republic economically. On Monday, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had warned that Iran might soon reach its crude oil storage capacity. He said, and I quote, "While the surviving IRGC leaders are trapped like drowning rats in a sewage pipe, Iran's creaking oil industry is starting to shut in production thanks to the U.S. blockade. Pumping will soon collapse, gasoline shortages in Iran next." Now, in response to Trump and Bessent, Ghalibaf posted this: "3 days in, no well exploded. We could extend to 30 and live stream the well here." That was the kind of junk advice the U.S. admin gets from people like Bessent, who also pushed the blockade theory and cranked oil up to $120+. Next stop, oil at $140. The issue isn't the theory, it's the mindset. And before Bessent's remarks on Monday, Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf in a cryptic message said, although Trump and his chorus-singing administration claim they have all the cards, Iran holds quite a leverage as well. In a post, Ghalibaf threatened with a symbolic message asserting that Iran has significant leverage to disrupt global energy markets, countering American pressure. In fact, he used a mathematical formula that showed Iran's potential supply disruption tools versus U.S. demand-side management capabilities. On the one hand, Ghalibaf's threat on energy crisis seems quite real. The over 2 months long West Asia conflict has pushed crude to above $120 per barrel already, which is the highest since the Ukraine crisis of 2022. Analysts also align with Ghalibaf and bet on oil surging to the 2022 highs of above $140 as soon as this week. On the other hand, America's leverage claims seem to be playing out too. Remember, data from Kepler Analytics and Bloomberg showed that Iran is indeed facing storage capacity risks. The analysis showed that Iran's storage capacity can actually accommodate only about 15 to 25 million further barrels of oil. Net flows are currently running between 1 and 1.5 million barrels per day. At that rate, the storage is expected to be filled up in 12 to 25 days. However, Iran has turned to aging tankers as a stopgap. Iran has reportedly revived its 30-year-old tanker, Nasha, to store excess oil at sea. But the shortage of space to store oil is a major issue for Iran. Remember, the country would have to begin shutting its wells. However, shutting down oil production is a complex and often irreversible process, particularly its water injection fields. So the real question is, what can Iran actually do if it runs out of storage space?